Chapter 73. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Sweat. I came back later than I expected. Everyone please forgive me. Since they were all sitting together, He Yuan no longer conversed with Luo Nan alone. She began the meeting. He Yuan had already established her position in the society through her accomplishment of single-handedly repelling the human-faced arachnid's clone in the elevator. She had analyzed the previous problems. Of course, she had a faint military background. No one expressed any dissatisfaction with her presiding over the meeting. At least on the surface. As for Luo Nan, he was still in the stage where he was being observed. Gazes fell on his face, and all of them were straightforward playfulness and curiosity. There was no concealment whatsoever. Luo Nan was also observing them. If the operation continued, his safety would be greatly affected by these people. Of course, he couldn't be careless. He didn't remember it during the initial introduction, so he could only study it hard during the meeting. Luo Nan really admired his secretary when it came to this. It was only during their introductions that he learned that He Yuan had also just retired from the military. She had joined the Wilderness Explorers Association less than a day ago and was a newcomer, just like him. But with the same experience, He Yuan could clearly remember the names and nicknames of all the participants. There was no hindrance in communicating during the meeting, and she also had a clear understanding of everyone's duty and movement within the hotel. This was not just a matter of memory but also a matter of whether one was diligent or not. Speaking of meetings, the initial format was quite casual. He Yuan didn't walk down one topic after another. Instead, she followed the same pattern of communication she had with Luo Nan. She chatted and gathered information from all sides. Luo Nan didn't exit Project 001, so he could clearly see that the template's contents were being updated and adjusted at lightning speed. The blueprints of the limestone water village pub also became more and more detailed. It could be seen that He Yuan was attempting to reverse engineer the movements of the human-faced arachnid. She wanted to see how it would make its move against the black wolf. However, she was unable to see the results at the moment. Luo Nan felt quite familiar with this sort of intuitive deduction method. Love Goat small said Netka. He opened his notebook subconsciously. The flexible e-ink screen was still on the drawing interface. To him, the abstract and precise structure of the wraith sign was particularly eye-catching among the messy lines. The drawing interface stopped at the moment when he sensed the existence of the human-faced arachnid and worn Shuele. Luo Nan was a bit spellbound as he looked at the chaotic lines on the interface. What he could confirm was that he had not truly seen the human-faced arachnid in the instant he had drawn the wraith sign. What had stimulated him was an intense yet fuzzy feeling. It was similar to an incomparably mysterious intuition. Luo Nan was no stranger to this feeling. When he added his drawings, the self-portrait of the prison building, the sketch of the capture of Li Xueqing, they were all pieced together by the details of this intuitive inspiration. If he used Zhang Yingying's description of a shaman as a standard, this was the only ability he could rely on. Bang! Someone in the conference room slammed the table. Luo Nan was also alarmed. He originally thought that it was someone who was dissatisfied with He Yuan, but when he raised his head he discovered that it was actually a group of ability users. They had inexplicably sunk into an argument. It seemed that some problems were triggered as the content of the conversation gradually deepened. In a peaceful state, everyone was smiling and no difference could be seen. But at this time almost everyone in the conference room had emotions, but they showed different faces. Some were anxious, some were angry, some were absent-minded, some were disappointed, and some were watching coldly from the sidelines. Luo Nan felt that this was quite interesting. He took out his digital pen and the tip of the pen fell down, sketching on the flexible e-ink screen. The originally chaotic lines underwent a bit of embellishment, transforming into a muddy and turbulent river. The structure of the wraith sign was hidden within the tightly woven lines. Then he drew a few sketched fish within these lines. They were either undulating within the waves, leaping out of the water, or diving to the bottom of the river. Their postures and temperaments were all different. They symbolized certain people in the conference room. But there was one thing that was the same. Every fish was bobbing within the river, affected by the waves and the current. Luo Nan used this to symbolize complex emotions and willpower. Love Goat small said Netka. Next, Luo Nan drew a small boat on the surface of the river. The chains and anchors hung down to symbolize himself. Perhaps he was originally a member of the people bobbing within the river, but because of the heavily chained crow, his position was anchored and he was somewhat detached. As for He Yuan, her situation was similar to his. As a burner, she possessed the power of the format. She was like a reef in the water. As for the human-faced arachnid, it was a hunter hidden deep within the river. It used negative emotions as a primer, waiting for an opportunity to strike. It could permeate and exert influence on other people, but it could only meet force with force against Luo Nan and He Yuan. This was where his advantage lay. The tip of the pen reached this point, and a line of thought suddenly became clear in Luo Nan's mind. Picking Black Wolf to make a move shouldn't be a coincidence. How could the human-faced arachnid have the luck to randomly pick an awakened? Luo Nan thought about Shuele. He was also an excellent resource. His blood and energy were abundant. He was a top-notch tonic. Perhaps the human-faced arachnid had chosen every single person present. It had made contact with every single person, but no one had detected it. Yes, there was a specter like this. It had once floated above everyone's head, and then it had chosen the one it liked the most. It was also the most unlucky one. Just like now, the wraith sign hidden in the turbid river was connected to every fish, through the lines that passed through it. Mr. Luo. What? Luo Nan woke up from his trance with a start and discovered that someone was greeting him. The one who spoke was a tall and skinny young man. His nickname should be Bamboo Pole. He always had a cheeky smile on his face. He looked like an optimist, but his words were very sharp. Mr. Luo's psychic ability, accuracy, and sharpness need not be mentioned. There have already been facts to verify it. Then what's the range of coverage? I heard President He say that we need to create tactics around psychics. Is it close combat or is it long-range bombardment? We need to figure this out, right? Luo Nan smiled bitterly and looked at Zhang Yingying. She was the one who put the hat on him. She was the one who explained it. Zhang Yingying glared back, but she still opened her mouth. Luo Nan just joined the society. He doesn't understand anything. He needs to let old you appraise him and give him some pointers. He needs to have a basic concept. But Bamboo Pole was unforgiving. I heard that Mr. Luo's psychic ability is presented in drawings? I've seen you draw and draw all this time. Do you have any inspiration? Oh, not really. Of course Luo Nan wouldn't say that he was drawing a picture of them and that he felt that they were all going to be swallowed up. Luo Nan discovered that he was being targeted in response. This group of ability users had enough of quarreling internally. They began to exert their strength externally. He Yuan wasn't easy to deal with, so they picked a soft persimmon like him to pinch. When all was said and done, it was because he wasn't convinced. I saw it all. The one who raised her hand and laughed was a woman nicknamed Cat Eyes. She was roughly 30 years old and had a hot figure. She wore heavy makeup and looked like a bar dancer. Luo Nan had a deep impression of her because her ability was long-range perception. It was already very similar to a psychic. But it wasn't effective against dark side or life forms. She played the role of a scout in the team. Now Luo Nan had seen it for himself. Separated by the conference table, he was at least 7 to 8 meters away from Cat Eyes. He could even see it. There were already people jeering at this time. Kitty, what did he draw? It's fine if Mr. Luo's face is tender. We can do it ourselves. Yeah. This is the first time I've seen this type. Kitty, you interpret it for us. Cat Eyes was the type who wished for the world to be in chaos. She didn't care about Luo Nan's expression and giggled as she opened her mouth to describe. This drawing has a very messy appearance. It's like a river. There are boats and reefs on the river. There are small fish swimming below. And then, Luo Nan was a bit helpless against this sort of noisy character. He wanted to put away the digital pen, but the pen tip sank a bit. It was as if an invisible thread had wrapped around it. There was a sudden reaction on the mental plane. The chains rattled and trembled. The wraith sign at the front also seemed to flicker with light. Luo Nan subconsciously moved his pen and a marvelous feeling appeared. It was as if he had brought something with him. Cat Eyes, who had been giggling, suddenly went mute at this moment. Blood seeped out from the corner of her eyes and she fell backwards. Chapter 74. A Genius in 1 Second Remembers Love? Speak. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The chairs in the conference room were quite stable. Cat Eyes bumped into the back of the chair, causing it to sway slightly and push her body forward. Her entire body was as soft as a noodle. Clearly, she had completely lost consciousness. She swayed a few more times before finally falling forward. Her forehead bumped into the conference table with a muffled sound. He did not react at all. The tip of the pen in Luo Nan's hand suddenly stopped. Aside from Cat Eyes' strange reaction, countless blurry and chaotic scenes suddenly exploded before his eyes. There were even more peculiar sounds, smells, and other signals. They surged over one after another. This was absolutely not the stimulation of his senses from the external environment. Instead, it was information signals that were directly transferred to his nervous system. There was no logic behind it. There was no distinction between primary and secondary. They just swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Luo Nan was already extremely familiar with how to deal with this enormous amount of information. He did not attempt to analyze it at all. Instead, he directly transmitted it through the heavily chained crow and sent it into the external neuron. Luo Nan was able to understand what this sudden and unforeseen event was all about because he had this familiar scene as a comparison. He had dug out a piece from the body of the human-faced arachnid in the elevator. He had received a large amount of energy and a huge amount of information that could make one's brain stop. Right now in the conference room, the impetuous woman Cat Eyes was using her ability to spy on Luo Nan's creation. Little did she know that this creation was a part of Luo Nan's ability to operate on the mental plane. Frankly speaking, this sort of spying was extremely stupid. Cat Eyes had swapped places with the human-faced arachnid. She took the initiative to deliver herself to Luo Nan's doorstep when Luo Nan's mental plane was the most active. Then she was pierced through by the heavily chained crow. The chains and the wraith sign dug out a piece from her without a trace of politeness. The contents involved Cat Eyes' most proficient memories of long-range perception. The specific contents would need to be analyzed by the external neuron. Bang! Someone slammed the table when they saw Cat Eyes' miserable appearance. Kid Luo. What the hell are you doing? Bang! Someone beside Luo Nan also slammed the table and stood up. You bunch of idiots. What the hell are you doing when a psychic is working? The one who stood up and roared was Zhang Yingying. Perhaps it was because she had an instinctive protective heart towards the talent she had unearthed herself. She stood up without the slightest hesitation and tore at her friend. Her imposing manner soared to the heavens. When old you burns the turtle shell, why don't you try pouring a basin of water on it? Why don't you try smashing old Gao's altar when he's casting the spell? Try slapping Lao Bai's face when he's in the dream. Even if you don't know about manners, you should at least know about taboos, right? Since when did shamans become someone you can flirt with at any time? After a round of reprimanding, regardless of whether they were convinced or not, the group of ability users were all dumbfounded. At this moment, Cat Eyes' shoulder moved. She began to show signs of regaining consciousness. The people at the side crowded around to take a look. Approximately 5 or 6 seconds passed before Cat Eyes finally regained her wits. She sat up straight with the help of someone. She blinked her eyes and had a blank expression on her face. What happened? Did he lose his memory? Someone stretched out his finger. Kitty, how many is this? Frem. Cat Eyes' vitality did not diminish in the slightest as she scratched with her long manicured fingers. She quickly recovered and began to feel annoyed that there were too many people crowding around her. She waved her hand to chase them away. Love, go, smalt sag netka, what happened just now? Give me a clear explanation. How would I know? Cat Eyes' voice was sharp and clear when she spoke. But when she looked at Luo Nan, she clearly felt a bit weak. I was just looking at the painting and feeling the changes in his aura in passing. I wanted to see if this painting was for real or just to scare people. Oh. More than half of the people rolled their eyes. Just looking at the painting was fine. Why did you have to feel his aura? When a psychic was working, the rise and fall of his aura was equivalent to the life and death combat state of a combatant. A single mistake would cause a reversal. Who knew what the consequences would be? Zhang Yingying slammed the table on the spot. Kitty, do you not want to live anymore? Cat Eyes was clearly a bit embarrassed. I was just trying. I was just curious. There are a few psychics in this society. Each and every one of them are hidden like thieves. It's rare to see such an interesting lad. Mr. Luo. Yuan completely ignored the ruckus of these unreliable people. She noticed that Luo Nan had not opened his mouth to speak for a long time. Zhang Yingying turned her head when she heard this. she saw Luo Nan with his half-opened eyes and a stupefied expression. It didn't seem like he was angry. It seemed like he had lost consciousness. Cat Eyes. She no longer affectionately called her Kitty. She directly called her by her full nickname. This proved that Zhang Yingying was truly angry. Luo Nan is just a rookie. Do you understand? Plus, he's a gifted student, not a systematic student. He doesn't know any taboos. Especially psychics. They can't even protect him in time. Yet you purposely poke him. Do you even have the intelligence of a professional? Whether it was Cat Eyes or the friends by his side, they all knew that they had caused a huge disaster. Each and every one of them shrunk their heads, not uttering a single word. He Yuan pressed against her ears for a moment. She frowned at Zhang Yingying and said, I've been looking for old you. I haven't been able to contact him. He might be in a psychic state. I don't know how to contact Mr. Gao and Mr. Bai. You contact them and ask how to handle this situation. Oh, okay. Zhang Yingying knew that the situation was urgent. She immediately did as she was told. Cough. I'm not a gifted student. I'm a systematic student. A sudden voice rang out. Luo Nan raised his half-closed eyelids and corrected Zhang Yingying's misunderstanding once more. Zhang Yingying was startled and then overjoyed. She wanted to pat Luo Nan on the shoulder, but she thought for a bit. In the end, she didn't dare to do so. She just slapped the table in passing. As long as you're fine, you'll be a systematic student in the future. In the future, if anyone is blind enough to dare say that you're a gifted student, I'll chop them in half. As she spoke, her gaze swept across the faces of a few unreliable fellows across from her. Cat Eyes immediately raised her hands in surrender. Yes. I'm a systematic student without a doubt. Even Cat Eyes, the instigator of all this, was kneeling. The others grunted and groaned. They could only tacitly agree to this preposterous classification. He Yuan's cold and hard fingers pressed against the side of Luo Nan's neck. She felt the amount of blood flowing through his aorta. Her other hand gently placed on his forehead. She spoke softly. Are there any symptoms of congestion or ischemia in your brain? Dizziness, blackness in front of your eyes? Luo Nan shook his head a bit awkwardly. I'm fine. Luo Nan really was fine. His mind was clear from the very beginning. The reason why he didn't react to the outside world was because his attention was completely focused on the external neuron. Though the two pieces of information that had been dug up could both be described as enormous, the contents of Cat Eyes' long-range perception were nothing in comparison. The external neuron was still in the process of analyzing the human-faced arachnid's information. However, Cat Eyes had already finished analyzing the information within a short dozen or so seconds. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly and the interface of the flexible e-ink screen appeared on his retina. He noticed that the number of icons on the interface had changed once more. Chapter 75. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xianxia provides you with wonderful novels to read. Just like in the underground laboratory, on the main interface of the flexible e-ink screen, there was only one additional icon. It wasn't the previously existing gear, but it still had an extremely familiar appearance. The tetrahedron, inscribed sphere and circumscribed sphere. Luo Nan's visualization diagram. However, the icon was dark as a hole. It was as if an application had been downloaded, but the download and installation had not been completed. Most of it was still in the shadows and only a very small portion was lit up. The progress showed 1%. It was surprisingly slow. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts swept over the surface. He made some basic information clear, but doubts followed. In the end, how much did he dig out from the body of the human-faced arachnid? If he wanted to express the theme, shouldn't it be displayed as Wraith sign, or something? What did it have to do with visualization? These questions could only be answered after the download or analysis was completed. Luo Nan paid attention to another matter. The results of his analysis of Cat Eyes were not displayed on the main interface. He felt that there was a layer separating him from it when he wanted to touch it. There seemed to be some tricks to it. Hey, are you okay? Zhang Yingying, as well as the other people in the conference room, saw Luo Nan inexplicably enter a trance state after replying with a few sentences. Their hearts grew more and more uncertain. Being a shaman was a profession that involved mysterious things on the spiritual level. It was really not easy to grasp. Other than old Yu Gao Dishuan, who was well cultivated and didn't seem to have any abnormalities, the rest of the spirit mediums in the association were all a little neurotic. It was said that it had something to do with the backlash they received when they used their abilities in their early years. Zhang Yingying could not help but glare angrily at Cat Eyes, who knew that Luo Nan's line of sight would move at this time. He moved in sync with Zhang Yingying and pointed at Cat Eyes. Love, go, small, say, Cat Eyes was already a bit immune to Zhang Yingying's angry glare. But when Luo Nan looked at her with an unreadable expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She was inexplicably nervous. Hey, what are you so nervous about? Even Cat Eyes herself could not bear to watch her overly abnormal emotions. She had always been a troublemaker. She was careless and her courage was outrageous. She had always prided herself on this. However, ever since she caused trouble just now, she felt that her heart had no roots and she had really become an obedient cat. Now that she was facing Luo Nan, the feeling of weakness continued to sprout. Finally, her self-consciousness counterattacked. He was yelled at by Zhang Yingying just now because they were friends. Who the hell do you think you are? Cat Eyes immediately widened her eyes. She glared back at Luo Nan and her mouth became even more unrestrained. What? You want compensation? Sure, can I sleep with you? According to her observations of Luo Nan, this introverted and immature kid would most likely be unable to resist. In the end, Zhang Yingying would have to take the lead. When the time came, she would pester him endlessly for a bit and give him a more or less reasonable explanation. But the problem was that Luo Nan's gaze was completely devoid of any emotions that could be interpreted. Luo Nan was not affected by any external emotions, including Cat Eyes' deliberate provocation. Luo Nan saw that Zhang Yingying wanted to slap the table again, but he just nodded to Cat Eyes. Come over and help me out, okay? Everyone in the conference room looked at each other in dismay. Cat Eyes pointed at herself and said, Me? Hold on. This posture is too weak. Cat Eyes wanted to flip out again, but Luo Nan had already lowered his head. His digital pen fell onto the flexible e-ink screen once more. What are you pretending for at such a young age? Cat Eyes let out a laugh. She suddenly jumped over from the table without any warning. Her 12-centimeter roots were as tall as the heavens and she landed noiselessly. Her movements were nimble and she was truly like a large cat. The thick and dizzying smell of perfume covered the entire area. She supported herself on the table with one hand and half of her body turned into a shadow. She fell onto the flexible e-ink screen in Luo Nan's hand. Hey, pretentious kid. How do you want me to help you? It can't be that you can't draw a picture so you want to find a scapegoat in the end, right? Luo Nan glanced at her. He just felt that this woman was unreasonable. But sudden inspiration was very precious. He didn't want to make a mistake, so he simply lowered his head and looked straight at the flexible e-ink screen. He said, Don't talk. Try your best not to let your imagination run wild. Look at this picture of mine. What do you think? You want to harm me again? Thinking back to the miserable state of her bloodshot eyes, Cat Eyes felt a bit weak in her heart. It wasn't easy for her imposing manner to rise, but it rapidly declined. Zhang Yingying pushed her from behind. I've already looked at it several dozen times. Nothing happened. You're clearly looking to die, okay? Who knows if you guys are having an affair or not? Cat Eyes casually mocked back. She squinted her eyes, looking as if she wanted to look but did not dare to look. Shut up. Luo Nan's commanding words entered her ears and Cat Eyes' heart skipped a beat. She really did not speak anymore. Her eyes opened a bit and she looked towards Luo Nan's flexible e-ink screen. She had already used her long-range perception to scan this sketch, but she did not discover anything strange about it. But now that she obeyed Luo Nan's command, her gaze fell down and the feeling was completely different. There were all sorts of figures on the sketch. For example, a small boat with chains hanging down. There were reefs that faced the wind and waves. They were all extremely eye-catching. But she inexplicably locked the focus of her gaze onto a certain fish that seemed to be swimming in circles within the muddy river. It looks a lot like me, an absurd thought assaulted her mind. Then she saw Luo Nan's digital pen fall down. It drew out many lines around the fish that she was gazing at. Even drew out its body. Strangely enough, her mind became a bit absent-minded when these lines appeared. It was as if the lines did not fall onto the flexible e-ink screen, but rather they were being pulled out from her body. There was an incorporeal specter reaching out with its hand. It seemed to be gently caressing, but it also seemed to be cutting into her internal organs and skull, dissecting her entire body. When this thought became clear, Cat Eye's body froze on the spot. The group of ability users saw Luo Nan draw on the spot. Luo Nan's pretentiousness was raised high, and their curiosity was piqued. They all gathered around in a circle. From their perspective, Luo Nan's sketch appeared chaotic at first glance, but it was extremely intuitive. The originally chaotic interweaving river structure inexplicably cleared out a relatively clear trajectory as the tip of the pen moved. It clearly symbolized the route that the fish had taken to get here. Some of the quick-witted ones vaguely understood that this seemed to be tracing back to something that had happened before. Psychics could trace back to the past. They could foresee the future. The conference room was silent for a time. No one dared to disturb the work of a genuine psychic. Sister He. Luo Nan suddenly spoke once more. This was just a habitual action, but he quickly reacted. He switched to the psychic wave network and entered Project 001 to converse with He Yuan. At this time, a blurry figure appeared on the structural map of the Limestone Water Village pub. He tried to find a matching area within it. The problem was that Luo Nan was unfamiliar with the operation, so he could only seek help from others. Luo Nan and He Yuan's little movements could not be hidden from others. The group of ability users did not need to think to know what was going on. They immediately rushed into the encrypted channel and switched to Project 001. The only one who did not do this was Cat Eyes. At this very moment she was completely unable to divert any energy. Her legs, which were wrapped in black stockings, were trembling uncontrollably. If she had not used her hands to support herself on the table, she might have already fallen to her knees. That specter, that incorporeal specter, was not satisfied with dissecting her completely. It began to greedily devour her. Cat Eyes could only feel her strength rapidly draining away. Her consciousness grew more and more absent-minded. And the source of all of this? She could still see the tip of the pen on the flexible e-ink screen. It seemed to be flowing, but every minute pause was a heavy bombardment on the mental plane. Luo Nan. It could only be Luo Nan. This demon. Cat Eyes recalled the entire process from beginning to end and suddenly understood. This was clearly a conspiracy, a set of traps. It was a demon ritual that was publicly launched under the watchful eyes of everyone. Chapter 76. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Zhou.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Under the stimulation of anger, Cat Eyes felt that her thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. She wanted to destroy this demon's scheme. She immediately opened her mouth to shout, but only then did she discover that not a single muscle in her body was listening to her commands. Anger was only a temporary flame, while fear was a boundless tide that would extinguish the flame as soon as it rose. At this time, all of Cat Eye's strength had melted away in the great tide of fear. At the same time, her will had melted away as well. In the tide of fear, feelings of regret began to emerge. This demon, he's been eyeing me for a long time? Or is it because I bumped into him? God, I'm so stupid. Amidst her self-reproach, Cat Eyes was like a sacrificial offering placed on an altar. Her body could not move, her mouth could not speak, and even her thoughts gradually stiffened. Only his blood and soul flowed out bit by bit, flowing to an unknown destination. She tried to find the home of her blood and soul, but in a daze, it was as if she had fallen into a boundless dark prison. In the restless darkness, the treacherous and cold 6 spots of light lit up. The blurry silhouette around it moved its many legs and gradually approached. His already stiff consciousness suddenly moved, receiving a stimulus. It was a vivid memory from the target's information. Human-faced arachnid? Why the human-faced arachnid? In her daze, no one could answer her questions, let alone ease her fear. When the human-faced arachnid's image became clear, the surrounding dark veil seemed to come alive. It possessed its own meaning. The twisting darkness at the front of the human-faced arachnid that was constantly drawing closer to her must be its ugly mouth. He was going to be chewed, corroded, and swallowed. No, absolutely not. Cat Eyes suddenly came to a realization that came from the spiritual perception of an awakened. It didn't matter if this was a devil's ritual or if it was a trap or a plot. If she was truly devoured by the human-faced arachnid right now, she would certainly be consigned to eternal damnation. She would never have the chance to start over again. Help, help. Someone save me. Cat Eyes howled at the top of her lungs in the gradually muddled mental plane. But on the plane of reality she merely hung her head and trembled slightly. Love Gog smalt Sagnet Chu. The more she sensed the real situation, the more despair she felt. What kind of power could confine her in this terrifying darkness? Was there no power that could save her? Oh! A strange trembling sound rang out. From the deepest part of the darkness, a long chain shimmering with a faint light suddenly pierced through. This was a change that Cat Eyes could not comprehend at all. But she was faced with the desperate situation of the human-faced arachnids devouring. She struggled to grab hold of any variable. If both of them were in a hopeless situation, she would choose the relatively better one. She focused all of her consciousness and screamed desperately, "Help, help." The chains clearly sensed her summons and came crashing through the air. Cat Eyes did not have the slightest intention of evading. She allowed the chains to pierce through her body and pierce through her soul. She did not feel any pain. Instead, she felt a strange sense of support. She tried her best to penetrate the shackles into every corner of her body and mind. The walala trembling sound disappeared and was replaced by a strange ka-sovovo sound. Every time a chain was locked, it would be dead. From Cat Eyes' perspective, this represented a safety rope on the body of a person in danger. Every time a chain was locked, she felt a wonderful sense of security and satisfaction. Then Cat Eyes felt herself rise up and gradually leave this darkness. Her strength gradually recovered and her consciousness entered the plane of reality. She faintly felt that something was wrong. But the incomparably realistic experience of the mental plane collided with reality. It was as if she was placed in a half-awake and half-awake dream. Everything that was inconceivable seemed to be as it should be. She even took the initiative to enter the psychic wave network and went to Project 001 where everyone was gathered. At this time she was completely capable of letting out a cry for help that she had not been able to before. But this thought had just emerged when it was extinguished like a bubble in the face of enormous fear and uncertainty. Cat Eyes had a feeling that the chains that pierced through her body and soul were her support. But a single sound could strangle her to death. In other words, her life was completely in the hands of the chain's controller. This was completely illogical, but Cat Eyes did not have the courage to verify it in her current dazed and chaotic mental state. Right now, all she wanted was for this damnable operation to end quickly so that she could properly sort out the logic within. Or perhaps the controller of the chain. Cat Eyes' gaze fell upon Luo Nan's body. It was him, this demon. It would be fine if he could give her a clear explanation. But from beginning to end, Luo Nan did not give her a single glance or a single hint. It was to the point that Cat Eyes sometimes wondered if everything that was happening before her eyes was just a hallucination of a mental patient. And at this time, an astonishing development occurred in Project 001. A low clamor sounded in the encrypted communications channel. It's right. It's right. Where is this? Everyone's attention was focused there, including Cat Eyes. The dream and reality were connected. The two mutually permeated each other. Everything became as it should be. Project 001 had already turned into a conference channel. Cat Eyes' late arrival did not attract anyone's attention. Everyone focused their attention on the structural diagram of Limestone Water Village Pub. The diagram that Luo Nan took out corresponded to a certain part of the diagram. The diagram that came from Luo Nan was a variant of a hexagram. The corners were slightly rounded. This sort of structure did not exist on any of the floors of the building. However, when He Yuan changed her train of thought and piled up the floor plans of each floor, the answer suddenly appeared. It's the west side of the 16th, 17th, and 18th floors. The rooms of the 3 floors are grouped together. It belongs to a KTV club. He Yuan came to a conclusion after looking through the hotel's information. The relevant information was immediately converted into psychic wave information and transmitted directly into everyone's brain. He Yuan's move, even with the support of the Hexeer, was an extremely high-level application on the mental plane. It was hard for normal awakened to even dream of it. But at this time no one expressed any astonishment. This was because all the astonished emotions had long since been filled up by Luo Nan. Zhang Yingying's question represented practically everyone. What does this position represent? Is it the hiding place of the human-faced arachnid? Yes. I believe that this is just a place where it once stayed. Moreover, it played a crucial role in forming its current state. Luonan honestly explained according to the feeling he got from his drawing. He also felt that he was becoming more and more like a psychic. But you went straight to the 21st floor. You've never been here before, right? No. You've never been here before. This is my first time here. Even though the large living area had an awe-inspiring reputation within Acumen College, this was Luonan's first time here. On the other side, Bamboo Pole could not help but speak in doubt. Then how did you come up with this diagram? Out of thin air? Luonan still answered every question. I've never been here before. But Cat Eyes should have been here before. In an instant, everyone's gazes turned to Cat Eyes in unison. Chapter 77. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes suddenly had a ridiculous feeling of absurdity as she faced everyone's gazes. Love go, small sake neck, you guys are searching for the human-faced arachnid here. Do you know that there is a fellow who can snatch food from the mouth of the human-faced arachnid sitting right next to you? But in the end she just replied blankly, I've been to the 18th floor and passed by this KTV, but I didn't feel any hexagram. Cat Eyes did not use the psychic wave network. Instead she spoke directly. This made her feel that she was a bit closer to reality. No one could understand her current state of mind. Everyone thought back to Luonan's request for Cat Eye's help. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, that's awesome. This is memory reading and subconscious digging. Lao Bai's dreamland technique? Old Bai's results are all messed up. How can it be so clear? Yes, it's completely graphic, so it's not easy to decipher. Hey kitty, does it feel good to be dug so deeply? Finally, there was someone who was concerned about Cat Eyes' condition. However, Cat Eyes responded with a 12-centimeter tall slender root. With a howl, the one with the foul mouth knelt down, hugging his feet. He Yuan clapped her hands, getting everyone present to focus their attention. In any case, we must conduct an investigation. We must strive to understand the mysteries behind the growth of the human-faced arachnid's strength. At the same time, you can also do some practice. The previous meeting had more or less produced some results. Yuan convinced this group of ability users. In this situation where they were unable to sense the human-faced arachnid, they had to formulate a strategy around Luonan in order to guarantee their safety and effectiveness. Due to the lack of time, they had only made a preliminary design. There were many details that had not been perfected. They could use this opportunity to demonstrate it on the spot. From the 81st floor to the 18th floor, the 63rd floor should be fine, right? No one answered and no one cowered. At a time like this there must be no problem. Luonan looked all around. It seemed that he was the only one who didn't understand what was going on. That's right, when they were arguing just now I was lost in thought. Currently in the Limestone Water Village pub, there were a total of 12 members. Among them, the Black Wolf was heavily injured and unconscious, while the Black Beetle had long since left the team, leaving only 10 members. In addition, there were 4 professional bodyguards that He Yuan had brought along. One of them was assigned to take care of Black Wolf, Shuelei, and the others who were injured. This way there were a total of 13 people. This was precisely the centralized mode that He Yuan had always advocated. Of course, this mode didn't mean that everyone had to squeeze into the same elevator. The 13 of them were divided into 2 groups. Luonan, He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, the 3 bodyguards, and the society's crag burst. A total of 7 people walked through the elevator. The power to protect Luonan was strengthened to the greatest degree. The other 6 people maintained a certain distance. They descended rapidly from the fire escape passageway and the inclined surface of the outer wall of the building. They formed a resonance with Luonan and the others. The Hexaear was used to maintain communication in the middle. In case they encountered an attack from the human-faced arachnid, or if Luonan formed a clear response, they would quickly form an encirclement of support. The strategy was simple and crude, but it was very suitable for this temporary combination. Only the awakened could achieve such a direct method of advancement. Among them, Cat Eyes was nimble and lithe as well as her long-range perception ability. She naturally became the scouting vanguard, and she was also one of the members that descended from the building. She shuttled back and forth amidst the interweaving lights and shadows of the building. The cold autumn night wind blew against her face. In the past it would have been so carefree. But now it was unable to blow away the knot in her heart. Cat Eyes was still hoping that she would be far away from Luonan. The situation of being bound and restrained would take a turn for the better. But when she deliberately dashed forward, putting a distance of 100 meters between them, the incorporeal chains continued to exist. Some of the chains were even buckling together. They made a clicking sound that was neither too fast nor too slow that only she could hear. She could not help but tremble with every sound that rang out. Although the physical distance was pulled apart, she was clearly getting closer and closer to the master of the chains on the mental plane. It was absolutely not an emotional distance. Instead, it was a terrifying magnification and distortion. Luonan's current state of mind was tranquil and slightly depressed. From Cat Eye's perspective, it was like the gray clouds of the desert sky were pressing down on her head. She unconsciously felt a bit suffocated. She seemed to be able to hold on for now, but she did not dare to imagine what would happen to her if Luonan became irritable and furious. "Kitty, you're rushing forward too much," Zhang Yingying reminded her through the hex ear. Cat Eyes snorted to herself. Her tall and slender roots drew a long mark on the glass wall, stopping her downward momentum. She speculated maliciously in her mind. Did Luonan tie up this Zhang Yingying long ago? Did she wag her tail and beg for pity? Does Her Majesty Empress Wu know about this? But soon reason and her senses simultaneously told her that this was clearly not the case. Up until now, she was the only unlucky person in the vicinity. This answer made Cat Eyes even more vexed. Currently, Cat Eyes was the first to reach the 20th floor. She had taken the 5 floors up and down, a vast area of 50 meters in diameter, into the range of her senses. According to the plan, she leaped into the hallway of the building and walked down the fire escape. At the same time she reported the situation. It really is a KTV. It's also a clubhouse, the kind that hurts the eyes. Humph, the age composition is seriously low. Young people these days. Cat Eyes entered the clubhouse, which was decorated in a blurry and strange style. It was like a maze, just like the vast majority of similar places. Cat Eyes was dressed in a fiery dancer outfit. She fit in quite well. The young boys passing by cast their gazes at her. Occasionally they would bump into a waiter, but they would be confused by the thick makeup on her face. In a moment of stupefaction they would pass by her. Cat Eyes swayed her long legs. She seemed to be leisurely, but she was actually very nimble as she passed through the rooms on the 3 floors. In the end she arrived at the 16th floor. According to the floor plan, this was one of the largest rooms in the hexagram structure. Right now a fiery party was going on inside. Although she did not enter the room, her sight, hearing and smell had already clearly reproduced the situation inside with her long-range senses. Cat Eyes lazily transmitted, "No ability users have been discovered. Do you want to do an on-the-spot investigation?" This time it was He Yuan who spoke. "Don't destroy the scene. Wait until Mr. Luo arrives before handling it." Just as the call ended, someone swayed over from behind. It was a young lad. His age could not be over 20, but it was clear that he was very experienced. He pretended to be dizzy and simply reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' perky buttocks. However, when he was 2 centimeters away, the young drunkard felt a pain in his wrist. He inexplicably swung his body to the side and slammed into the wall with a bang. The young drunkard was in a daze. Just as his anger was rising, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Cat Eyes was silently leaning against the wall to the side. The sexy curves in the tight sequined dance costume, the long legs wrapped in black stockings, and the thin and tall legs that stretched the soles of her feet, together with the wall and the floor, naturally formed a soul-stirring shape. Her casually scattered short curly hair covered a small half of her face. Her fiery red lips faintly opened and closed, forming a smile that was not a smile. "Little brother, do you have a cigarette?" The young drunkard immediately forgot about his previous encounter. He chuckled foolishly, "I don't have any on me, but I do have some inside. Our Mystic Arts Research Society does this. Let's go together." He reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' towering chest. However, what welcomed him was the world spinning once more. This time his head slammed into the wall and he immediately fainted. Chapter 78. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes exerted her strength ingeniously. She let the young drunkard support himself with his shoulders and feet. He was half leaning and half crooked, maintaining his body from falling. Love go little Sage Netku. In addition to the flirtatious beauty at his side, it was a typical case of a pervert meeting a flirtatious ghost. They were about to fool around together. The waiters that passed by occasionally cast curious glances at them at most. They didn't have any other reactions. Cat Eyes just waited at the door. She even had the leisure to pull out a lady's cigarette and light it. She casually asked in the channel, "What the hell is the Mystic Arts Research Society?" There are 6 schools nearby. There are 4 societies with the same name. The mystic arts has been quite popular in recent years. The figure just now was a variation of the Star of David. It doesn't seem like a coincidence. Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work, indicated for Cat Eyes to lift up the drunkard's face. He gave her a face recognition and soon came to an answer. Huang Bingzhen. Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society officer. He's a rich second generation. Acumen College. Zhang Yingying let out an unclear laugh. Unfortunately, no one besides Luo Nan understood. Bamboo Pole continued. In addition, I discovered something amazing in the club's database. Take a look at what it is. A contact list. They're all female students. The information is complete. The types are plentiful. There's everything you need. Well. A strange silence appeared in the channel until Cragburst, who was next to Luo Nan, cursed and revealed the secret. They're charging by the head. Bamboo Pole, why don't you go die? Cragburst was a 2-meter-tall brawny man. He had spent nearly 10 years in the military. His temperament was a bit coarse, but he was an extremely good choice for a bodyguard and shield. It was because of his military background that he was the most respectful and cooperative towards He Yuan. Love go little say Netka. He instinctively glanced over, but He Yuan's expression didn't change. It was as if she hadn't heard a thing. Bamboo Pole didn't forget about proper business in the private channel. The database contains the agreement signed between the club and Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. You can see that the club was renovated 4 years ago in accordance with the design requirements of the society. At the same time, this club is also a big financial backer of the club. The funds listed in the public accounts are more than 7 figures every year, and it's even more unclear in private. The elevator had already reached the 16th floor. Unlike Cat Eyes, this group of people was too big of a target. The waiter came over early to inquire about them. He Yuan ignored him and directly asked Luo Nan, "Mr. Luo?" Luo Nan raised his head and looked at this strange and indistinct clubhouse space. The basic characteristic of the coating on the outer wall was that it was made up of peculiar tree vines and decorative designs that encircled the mysterious circular structure of a magical array. The dim, dark red streams of light were like solvents entering tubes in a laboratory. They passed through the vines and patterns on the wall and traveled among the seemingly independent magic circles. Luo Nan looked for quite a while before speaking in a low voice. The lighting effects here are quite interesting. The waiter clearly saw who was standing in the middle of the crowd and immediately revealed a standard smile. The style of our clubhouse was planned and designed by a professional mysticism team in order to bring our customers a brand new and special experience. Luo Nan interrupted the waiter's cliché. Prepare a private room for us. Also, are the members of the Mystic Society still in 1613? Luo Nan was referring to the room that Cat Eyes had locked onto. The waiter nodded and Luo Nan headed over there. He Yuan ordered the 3 bodyguards to wait in the private room first. Zhang Yingying had the waiter prepare a fruit platter and red wine. She had the appearance of meeting a guest before having fun. At the same time, He Yuan issued an order on the psychic wave network. Octopus. Hallucinogen. Several seconds later, a young man wearing a funny cartoon t-shirt and a jacket came out from a nearby restroom. He greeted Cat Eyes, who was waiting outside 1613, and directly pushed open the door to enter. Cat Eyes grabbed the young drunkard next to her and entered the private room right behind him. The overall structure of 1613 was an extremely standard circular shape. The dazzling projection equipment in the center was designed in the form of a very peculiar lampstand. Right now, it ignited with an ambiguous pink glow, smearing the dusky room into an even more chaotic mess. There were no sofas, chairs, or the like in the private room. There were only a few soft cushions. Everyone was casually sitting on the ground. There were 20 to 30 people playing and accompanying. But right now, these people were already under the dual effects of their own drugs and Octopus's hallucinogen. Their consciousness was in chaos. They were either men and women hugging each other or laughing and crying. They were completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. Even Octopus did not expect this excessively intense result. He was currently adjusting the composition of the drug in a flurry to avoid creating a group of idiots. Cat Eyes rolled her eyes at him and casually tossed the drunkard to the ground. "Hurry up. We're already outside." A knock rang out from the door as they spoke. The waiter was the first to walk in. He saw this scene, but he didn't seem surprised at all. He very naturally spoke to Octopus, who was standing there in a clear-headed state. "A guest has come to visit." Luo Nan and his group walked in as they spoke. Nanster." Octopus didn't care about the drug. He had a pleasantly surprised appearance of seeing an old friend. He laughed heartily as he walked forward and gave Luo Nan an extremely forceful hug. His clumsy and pale acting made He Yuan frown. However, the waiter really didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He turned around and left after Zhang Yingying took the fruit platter and red wine. The scene of a dove occupying a magpie's nest was completed. Luo Nan coughed as he pushed Octopus away. He also stopped his passionate patting. He looked around the room and saw the chaotic situation. For a time he didn't know what to say. Zhang Yingying casually picked up a piece of fruit and sent it into her mouth to taste. She said vaguely, "Are you disappointed? Looks like you were nearly one of them." Luo Nan responded casually, "It looks like there are quite a few places where I can be of use. I don't have to worry about not having a spot in the future." Luo Nan no longer paid attention to Zhang Yingying. He turned to Octopus with a smile. "Bro Octopus, your drug concoction is quite beautiful. Please give me some pointers in the future." Octopus was baffled. He could only laugh. "Well said, well said." Cat Eyes shot him a cold glance and directly fired a map cannon. "A bunch of trash." This group of people turned from guest to host. They greeted and chatted within the room, but He Yuan didn't forget the most important matter from beginning to end. She looked all around at the decorations of the room and the decorations on the walls. Her brows furrowed tighter and tighter. She stepped over the bodies lying on the ground and walked to the center of the projection equipment. She carefully observed the extremely medieval style of the lamp stand. Luo Nan didn't bother with Zhang Yingying and the others right now. He continued to observe and sense, but his attention was placed on the rather gorgeous pattern of the floor. Under the cover of the bodies, the pattern seemed to be broken and continuous. It passed through the transfer of many geometric figures to converge towards the central region. Finally, Luo Nan's gaze also cast towards the lamp stand. He just so happened to collide with He Yuan's gaze. "Mr. Luo?" Luo Nan nodded towards her. The human-faced arachnid should have appeared here before. Chapter 79. I think that the surrounding things are all its nourishment. Luo Nan pointed at the surrounding squirming and giggling human bodies. The human-faced arachnid really did have a special fondness for these negative emotions and desires. He hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak. "There are also these patterns. They count as magical arrays. I know very little about the mystic arts. Are there any that I'm good at?" Zhang Yingying immediately raised her hand from behind. "Does my experience with tarot cards count?" He Yuan saw that Luo Nan wanted to say something but hesitated. She directly said, "Right now, Mr. Luo, you are the only one among us who has the qualifications to make a judgment about the human-faced arachnid. There is no need to introduce other explanations." Zhang Yingying stuck out her tongue. Luo Nan scratched his head, but in the end he continued. "In the beginning I thought that these decorations, the vines, the patterns and the magical arrays were all just for show. They had no real meaning. But here a portion of the patterns seem to have displayed their use. They are like water channels gathering a portion of energy here." Luo Nan pointed at the projector in the form of a lamp stand. He didn't need to bring out his psychic abilities. He just needed to use his eyes to do this. The geometric patterns and the lamp stand left behind remnants similar to the dark red spores on the warship, but they were also slowly evaporating. He Yuan couldn't see these residues, but she took out a small and exquisite spray from her pocket and sprayed it on the lamp stand. After 2 seconds, the light screen that came with the spray flickered with a faint light. Luo Nan could roughly guess that this should be a special substance similar to the shadow mist. It was capable of capturing traces of the Darksider species interfering with the real world. Indeed, there are remnants of the relevant rays. Zhang Yingying walked over at this time. She pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder and looked at the lamp stand. A while passed before she spoke to He Yuan, who was carefully observing as well. The matter seems to be complicated. Does it involve a secret order? He Yuan grunted but didn't immediately respond. Secret order? Luo Nan didn't understand. An inexplicable and troublesome organization of lunatics. Luo Nan stared at her. You said that ability users don't have secret societies and the like. Nothing is absolute in this world, and it's not a secret society, it's a cult, okay? Zhang Yingying saw that He Yuan didn't respond for a time. She faced Luo Nan and shrugged her shoulders. Think about it. There are 600,000 ability users in the entire world. The number of people who have a relatively complete cultivation system and have cultivated in a down-to-earth manner is at most a tenth. As for the remaining 500,000 or so, many of them have inexplicably acquired certain abilities. If no one guides them in time, many of them will start to become arrogant and consider themselves to be new human beings or children of God. They think that they are at the peak of mankind and can do whatever they want. That's what happens in many novels and comics, right? It's useless. This is the reality. Of course, most of these idiots would be taught a lesson by the police. If you can't even beat the exoskeleton armors, then don't brag about being a child of God or a holy infant. For those who are more troublesome, the burners of the military will meet them. After that, the association will communicate with them and welcome them into the organization to correct their worldview. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. But in the end there are still some very special fellows. They should be considered the gifted among the gifted. They are indeed extremely powerful. Even within the society, I'm afraid they are the most top-notch. It's not easy to communicate with them. They don't agree with the society's definition of the ability system. Instead, they have another kind of explanation. But their explanations often use their own abilities to forcefully apply myths, religions, mystic arts, and other existing theories. Or they go wild with their imaginations and change their appearances. The final result is establishing sects and religions. There are many secret sections. These people want to put their exotic theories into practice in the world. They want to verify the holes in their imaginations. That's how they establish themselves. The problem is that they themselves are very powerful, but their related theories are very preposterous. If you cultivate according to their theories, most people will die very miserably. But there's no other way. Magical powers are more awesome than 10,000 sentences of truth. There are still large batches of people who join these sections. They offer their everything and are extremely devout. The government has a huge headache over these things. Of course, the society has a huge headache as well. Luo Nan heard the hidden meaning in her words. In other words, the society can't do anything about them. It's holding back for fear of hurting the innocent. The leaders of these sects are brainless, but their strength is really very strong. Plus, these sects are deeply rooted in the cities. With the current population density, it would be better to just drop a nuclear bomb in the center of the city if they really were to turn hostile. Don't doubt me. Think about the human-faced arachnid. There's also the R&D district. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. He was a bit spellbound. Could those powerful ability users really possess the terrifying destructive power of a nuclear bomb? He was stimulated by this information. After coming back to his senses, he simply poured out the series of questions he had been suppressing at the bottom of his heart. Then how does the society define the ability system? In the end, what counts as an awakened? And what level am I at right now? Zhang Yingying's mouth and tongue were already parched from explaining the secret order. She was busy eating fruits to replenish herself. She waved her hand when she heard Luo Nan's words, speaking vaguely. You already have the hexa ear. Go take a look for yourself. I believe that Mr. Luo has already reached a certain level. He has even surpassed the level of a normal awakened. However, he is severely biased towards a certain field. He Yuan suddenly joined this topic and gave a relatively clear judgment. Zhang Yingying went, hey, and cried out, let's not talk about this for now. How's the matter with the order? Luonan wanted to slap her. In the end, He Yuan was a bit more concerned about proper business. She responded, I've already notified the society. We'll be retreating for now. No way? What a strong start and a weak finish. Octopus, who was hurrying to adjust his medicine, raised his head. We're disbanding just like this? Actually, a certain order leader has already protested against the society's actions. We've interrupted their holy ritual. Octopus was shocked. We've been discovered? Luonan was quite baffled. How were we discovered? Cat eyes glared at him for no reason at all. So you're blaming me? Zhang Yingying's attention was focused elsewhere. Holy ritual? Here. She simply tossed away the fruit platter, spread her hands and laughed out loud. She didn't know who was the one who said things like, fear of harming the innocent, just now. He Yuan responded in the calmest manner towards the different reactions of the people in the room. There's no reasoning to speak with those order leaders. And the methods of the secret order really do exceed common sense. In any case, we're dealing with the human-faced arachnid, not the secret order. This operation is halted and we're retreating. I will compile all matters into a brief and submit it to the society. It will be sent to everyone's hands. The speech this time was conducted through the psychic wave network. Immediately, the encrypted channel was filled with sighs and strange cries. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. This order leader has jumped quite high. Are you sure they aren't colluding with the human-faced arachnid or something? What's their name? Show us. He Yuan didn't say anything. She just tilted her head and indicated for Zhang Yingying to look at the center of the room. There was a projection device in the shape of a lampstand. It was unknown when, but the burning pink glow of the lampstand had already disappeared. Instead, a new image appeared on the two sides of the edge. There were two sets of thin chains hanging down, each pulling a flat plate. One plate was black and the other was white. They were symmetrical and hung motionless in the air, forming the classic form of a scale. At this moment, Zhang Yingying grinned. She wanted to say something, but she didn't open her mouth in the end. Instead, Octopus let out a low cry. Chapter 80. Luonan looked at the group of people who were either shocked or had serious expressions. This time, Luonan didn't ask any more questions. He directly searched the hexier for an answer. Through a mental search, the standard answer quickly jumped out. The Order of Justice was one of the 3 world-level secret orders. It was also the only secret order known to the world that worshipped a holy object. It didn't have a clear inclination towards worshipping a personified god. The highest leader of the order was called the First Oblatum. The holy object of the order was called the Scales of Truth. Its basic teachings were extremely vague. There were only a few words: the fairness of the world, the justice of truth. Within the order, they were passionate about sacrificial rituals. They were known to use a fair exchange to realize the balance of the world. Truthfully speaking, Luonan didn't understand half of it even though he had seen some introductions. There were some conceptual things that needed to be understood individually. At this time, He Yuan officially issued the order to retreat. After coming out of the private room, the temporary team had disbanded. He Yuan was still extremely strict. She informed every member that they shouldn't linger near Sky Capital Water Village until the society came up with a new opinion. It was best not to act alone. Although the human-faced arachnid had been heavily injured by her format of fire and it might not be able to launch its next wave of attacks in a short amount of time, ability users who were alone were clearly the best tonic for it. Oh my, I'm in such a sorry state. Bamboo Pole let out a sigh and said, "Good night everyone," before logging off. The other avatars in the encrypted communications channel disappeared one after the other. Luonan took the initiative to call out to Octopus. He added this drug concoction expert as a friend, ready to ask for help at any time. At the same time, he sent a request to Cragburst and Cat Eyes. Cragburst was very straightforward and responded very quickly. But Cat Eyes snorted coldly and just left. Luonan shrugged. He could feel that Cat Eye's attitude towards him had become increasingly vile after they completed the psychic drawing together. Hey, be careful. Cat Eyes holds a lot of grudges. Octopus had a pretty good impression of Luonan. He patted Luonan on the shoulder and left with Crag burst. Luonan felt quite innocent. What did he do to Cat Eyes? The initial backlash was caused by Cat Eyes using her ability to spy on his psychic process, summoning the heavily chained crow to counterattack. Or could it be said that the psychic senses of an awakened made her feel that a piece of her information had been dug out? You must have been too rough. Zhang Yingying giggled as she patted his back. Don't be fooled by Cat Eyes' flirtatious appearance. In fact, I've never seen her have a boyfriend since she joined the guild. Maybe she's a reserved old virgin? Was this a joke a woman should make? Luonan was disinclined to pay attention. It was He Yuan who turned around and unexpectedly joined the conversation. Mr. Luo, regarding the matter of Cat Eyes, your previous etiquette was a bit inappropriate. In the process of creating the psychic diagram, Mr. Luo should have probed and used Cat Eye's memories and subconscious. In a certain sense, this constitutes an infringement on her free will. Of course, Mr. Luo must have done it unintentionally, but it would be better to apologize afterwards. Luonan went, a bit embarrassed. He Yuan continued to supplement his general knowledge in this area. As a spiritually strengthened ability user and psychic, Sir Luo will definitely encounter similar problems in the future. However, you just need to remember one thing. Ability users are extremely sensitive to free will, so prior communication and subsequent explanations are extremely necessary. Naturally, Luonan humbly accepted the teachings. At this moment he thought of the evaluation that was interrupted by Zhang Yingying. It seemed that if he didn't clarify the situation now, he wouldn't have a chance today. Sister He, you said I'm seriously biased. He Yuan also thought of this matter. After a moment of silence she said, if I were to evaluate Mr. Luo's ability on the mental plane, I would look at it from the effects of dealing with the human-faced arachnid. I will give you a C+ or even a B-. However, your body can only be an F, nothing more. Zhang Yingying laughed and said, it can't be any less. Any less and I'll be a cripple. The corner of Luonan's mouth twitched. His body shouldn't be at this level. He had been training for many years. His toughness and agility should be above average. He Yuan coldly shot a glance at Zhang Yingying and solemnly said, the consequences of a serious imbalance between the mind and the body are 100 times more serious than being crippled. Be it the military or quantum holdings, there were countless bloody examples. The reason why I'm doing this is that I hope Mr. Luo can take this seriously. Zhang Yingying was unable to continue laughing. Luonan was also speechless. Since Mr. Luo mentioned the format before, let's talk about the format. I can understand the meaning of the format that Mr. Luo spoke of. It's different from the archetype format that I'm used to. It should pay more attention to individual characteristics. Is this right? Luonan thought for a moment and reluctantly nodded his head. He Yuan focused her gaze on Luonan. If you view the format as a type of building, artists can erect skyscrapers with toothpicks. Designers can complete a complete set of blueprints on the computer. But those are just models. They're just data. Truly practical buildings must be constructed using qualified and durable building materials. After all, the first essence of a building is practicality. If it's as Mr. Luo says, you possess an effective format. Then please choose the most suitable building materials for you and complete this building in a solid manner. This involves a complete transformation of your body's composition and mental willpower. It's absolutely not just visualization on the mental plane. If it's just data, then it's a bit better. But if it's an exquisite yet fragile piece of toothpick art that exists in the real world, it would collapse with a single breath. It would be meaningless. Aha! A toothpick-type man. Zhang Yingying clapped her hands in laughter. She didn't mind sprinkling salt on Luonan's wounds in the slightest. Who knew that He Yuan would change her target in the next moment? Miss Zhang. I know that you don't have any ill intentions towards Mr. Luo. But for a newcomer like him, your habitual jokes or exaggerated expressions are very easy to mislead. Just like with regards to the issue of secret orders, even though I don't like the way secret orders do things, I know that every secret order on record has a leader with an ability value of A. In the society's 3 levels of ability system, awakened, engineer, and extraordinary, they are at the top. They are powerhouses that stand at the peak of the world, and they also possess outstanding intelligence. They are absolutely not the powerful madmen that you speak of. You have a plan in mind, but it's very easy for you to cause Mr. Luo to misunderstand and form a wrong impression. For a psychic, this kind of wrong impression is very likely to be fatal. Zhang Yingying choked for a moment. Soon her eyebrows jumped up. She had made a mistake in her previous actions and received He Yuan's criticism. She had nothing to say. But right now, even her usual way of doing things had been reprimanded to the point of being useless. He Yuan, you really think too highly of yourself. Luo Nan felt that the atmosphere between the two was extremely tense, but it was all related to him. He felt a bit awkward for a time. Right when he was thinking about how to mediate, his wristband vibrated. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the number. He rushed to connect. Auntie. Chapter 81. I'm still upstairs. Luo Nan was unable to mediate the conflict between the two ladies. He took 2 steps forward and responded in a low voice. There was no doubt that his aunt was waiting somewhere nearby, waiting for the cold dinner to end. Luo Nan didn't feel the slightest bit surprised at this sort of stalking behavior. His aunt had this sort of temperament. She was determined to bring him home tonight. She wouldn't give Luo Nan any reason to refuse. If it were a few days ago, Luo Nan would have done everything possible to escape his aunt's evil clutches. But right now his drug production was in a state of shortage. There was nothing to do even if he returned to Blue Bay community. His thoughts of refusing weren't that firm. Luo Nan resisted a few more times, but in the end he threw in the towel and admitted defeat. I'm with a friend right now. I'll be down soon. Where are you, aunt? I'll come find you in a bit. Admitting defeat to his aunt wasn't a big deal, but Luo Nan still had some reservations. The effects of the withdrawal reaction couldn't be ignored. Suddenly cutting off the drug supply could very well lead to some abnormal changes in his nervous system. His formatting had just shown results. What should he do if it regressed because of this? Luo Nan looked at the friend list on the Hexier and gained a bit of confidence. It seemed that he really did have an additional channel of choice after joining the society. Luo Nan first dealt with his aunt with grunts and then turned to ask Zhang Yingying. Octopus Bro is very good at making drugs. Does he sell them to the outside world? Zhang Yingying blurted out. Who are you harboring evil intentions towards? There was no way to communicate. Sister He, you just have to display your invincible might and correct her 3 distorted views. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He felt that it was more appropriate to directly communicate with Octopus Bro. But Zhang Yingying wasn't happy, probably because his expression was too obvious. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Hey, speak clearly. What the hell do you want? 9.5 out of 10 people who do business with Octopus Bro aren't good people. Oh, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying suddenly reached out and pulled at his face. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't let her move, but this woman's strength far exceeded his by who knows how many levels. He was simply unable to resist. How many times had this happened? Luo Nan's face was flushed red. He was unable to suppress his anger. He Yuan frowned and wanted to stop her, but Zhang Yingying looked as if she had let go of all past grievances. She called out to her, Come. Let's take a look. I've always felt that the color of this kid's pupils was abnormal, as if he had taken too many drugs. Tell me, do you usually have this kind of bad habit? Why was he suddenly so sharp? Luo Nan was shocked. He forgot to struggle and Zhang Yingying forced his eyelids open. However, what could she see under the dim lighting of the clubhouse? He Yuan pulled Zhang Yingying's arm and said in a low voice, Stop fooling around. We haven't left the church's territory yet. Luo Nan finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's grip, but he still clenched his teeth in depression. What was up with this woman's monstrous strength? In the eyes of an awakened, was his body so weak that it was close to being crippled? He secretly swore that he would communicate with Zhang Yingying again after he achieved the balance of his body and mind and truly became an awakened. In any case, after He Yuan's interruption, Zhang Yingying didn't pursue the matter of him taking drugs. Luo Nan didn't want to stay with Zhang Yingying for a while. He wanted to leave, but he remembered that Shui Lei and Qin Xiaolin were still on the 81st floor. He had to go take a look at the situation. Luo Nan arrived at the floor without incident. He had just opened the elevator door when chaotic sounds came from the corridor. Luo Nan didn't care at first, but after a few steps he saw figures scattered in front of him. There were waiters, medical staff, He Yuan's bodyguards and so on. They were conversing outside the door. Shuelei, who was supposed to be lying in the room, had his head lowered as he leaned against the wall. He looked very dejected. Luo Nan had a good impression of this student who had a straightforward personality and high martial strength. After fighting side by side, the feeling was different. He immediately walked over and asked probingly, "Lei, are you okay?" Shuelei raised his head when he heard the voice. His eyes lit up when he saw Luo Nan. "Nanster, are you okay?" "Just now." Sigh. Shuelei didn't know where to begin with a multitude of things. In the end, he could only wave his hand, unable to continue. "What happened?" He Yuan asked the bodyguard in charge of taking care of the patients. The bodyguard had a bitter smile on his face as he explained the situation that had occurred. Of the 3 patients, Shuelei had only been knocked unconscious by He Yuan. He didn't have any injuries, so he woke up the earliest. He was easy to talk to and was easily pacified. Then he went to take care of his unconscious girlfriend until the doctor He Yuan invited arrived. Black Wolf's spine was fractured, so he was carried away for surgery early on. Qin Xiaolin was treated on the spot. Qin Xiaolin was fine when she didn't wake up. But when she woke up and saw Shuelei, her emotions were agitated. She was afraid. She was angry. She was sad. She chased Shuelei out of the room. She even alarmed the waiters on the floor. She lost control of her emotions. Luo Nan immediately thought of the human-faced arachnid. Clearly He Yuan was thinking the same thing. The two looked at each other and headed into the room. He Yuan blocked him and Zhang Yingying took his place. The smile on this girl's face was much fainter. Her body had a clear and sharp aura. She was clearly ready to go. But after entering the room, Luo Nan's eyes were filled with nothing abnormal. Qin Xiaolin was in deep sleep on the bed. Aside from being weak, there were no traces of the human-faced arachnid. The 3 people exchanged glances. They were all a bit stunned. The doctor was very dissatisfied with the 3 people who suddenly squeezed in. The patient has just been injected with a tranquilizer. She needs to rest. All unrelated people leave. He Yuan confirmed with Luo Nan that the human-faced arachnid really didn't exist. Then she indicated to Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying to leave first. She stayed behind to talk with the doctor. He Yuan walked out of the room after a few minutes. Luo Nan asked her, "What's going on?" Symptoms of stress. It's hard to understand facts that surpass one's common sense. Refusal to come into contact with facts, severe rejection or selective forgetfulness. The members of the society often encounter these kinds of things. Zhang Yingying shrugged. I've long since suggested that the scope of common sense of ordinary people should be expanded in time to let them get used to accepting the existence of ability users. Humph humph. Mutants, those unscientific things have been wreaking havoc for decades. Many people are still burying their heads in the sand. Luo Nan understood. So it turned out that Qin Xiaolin was unable to accept the sudden life and death battle between Shuelei and the Black Wolf. Then there was the human-faced arachnid. And even the influence of Luo Nan's hypnosis technique. He Yuan suggested, "It's better to let your friend go home first. He'll only make the patient more nervous if he stays by her side." Zhang Yingying shot a glance at the still dejected Shuelei. "This friend of yours is quite the material. His foundation is much better than yours. His adaptability is also quite strong. He should be the disciple of some martial arts master." Luo Nan approved of this conjecture. Shuelei's reaction in the elevator was truly admirable. He even suspected that this big guy should have an intuitionistic response to the threat of the human-faced arachnid. However, Zhang Yingying was serious for less than 10 seconds before she began to run her mouth again. "This pair is clearly bragging. Why don't I introduce your friend to the society? You can go to the society and find your own kind. This kind of sunny and strong man is definitely more popular than some toothpick guy." Luo Nan glared at her and asked He Yuan about Qin Xiaolin's treatment situation. Then he walked towards Shuelei. "Senior Sister Qin doesn't have any problems. The doctor will take good care of her. We can't help much here anyway. Let's go home first." Shuelei shook his head as expected. "I'll wait here. Luo Nan pressed down on his arm. Senior Sister Chen will be sent to the hospital to receive follow-up treatment. She just needs to be quiet for a few days in this kind of situation. She also needs to be quiet for a bit. Sko. It's getting late. My aunt's car is downstairs. She'll give you a ride. Shuelei clearly hung his head even lower when he said the word quiet. Luo Nan sighed and used a bit of strength to pull Shuelei up. Of course, Shuelei's mind was definitely shaken right now. Otherwise, how could he move? Luo Nan and Shuelei left side by side after greeting He Yueyin, Zhang Yingying and the others. They entered the elevator and it just so happened to be the one where Shuelei and He Lang had fought. Shuelei stared blankly at the remnants of the collision marks on the inner walls of the elevator. He suddenly spoke. You guys aren't normal people, right? You're not either. It's fate. Chapter 82. Luo Nan's consciousness was like a pearl that had sunk into the cold depths of the sea. It was like a lonely star that hung in the dark void. Sometimes it sank into darkness and sometimes it shone brightly. In the end, pure light and darkness determined their respective domains. All sorts of silhouettes and lines began to appear at the boundary between light and darkness. Pillows, bedside cabinets, table lamps, desk. From near to far, layer after layer expanded outwards. The simple concept and the familiar way of combining them formed a clearer meaning. Luo Nan made a judgment. He was in his own room, but he wasn't in the apartment in Blue Bay Community. Instead, he was on the east side of the second floor of his aunt's house. He had lived there for 5 years. Even more thoughts poured into his mind. Gear, human-faced arachnid, explorers society. He Yueyin, Zhang Yingying, Xie Junping. All sorts of images and clues interweaved to form a complete chain of cognition. Luo Nan finally found the node before he lost consciousness. The operation at Limestone Water Village pub had stopped. He sent Shuelei home. Then he seemed to have fallen asleep in his aunt's car. Then what time was it? Just as this thought stirred, the wristband on his wrist, the table lamp clock on the bedside cabinet, and the flexible e-ink screen within the notebook all lit up at the same time. 2:27 in the morning. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. But then his waist, thighs and calves transmitted a feeling of tightness and soreness. His calves were as hard as iron and stone. They were cramping. Luo Nan sucked in a breath of cold air. He crossed his legs and kneaded them. It took a long time for him to recover. But his fingers and toes felt swollen and numb. His blood and energy were stagnant and blocked. His stomach and intestines were convulsing, making his throat feel a bit nauseous. This was, without a doubt, a withdrawal reaction. Such a situation was within Luo Nan's expectations. He composed himself and did his best to ignore it. The AI system sensed his continuous movements and confirmed that the owner of the room had woken up. The system had no intention of going back to sleep and automatically turned on the wall lights. Luo Nan turned his head to look all around. Various furnishings appeared in his field of vision. They were exactly the same as what he had sensed on the mental plane. Of course, the most important thing was that the current time was 2:29 p.m. Luo Nan's mental senses were clearly accurate without error when he was tormented by his drug withdrawal reaction. Luo Nan closed his eyes once more, clearing his distracting thoughts. Sure enough, a clear picture appeared in his mind. The range wasn't very far. When it passed through the room and reached the corridor, it became dark and indistinct. It had already reached its limit. Calculating, it was about a 5-meter radius. Compared to Cat Eye's long-range perception, it was nothing at all. But it must be known that Luo Nan could only use the heavily chained crow or use the out-of-body state in order to accomplish this. But now it was natural. It seemed like his body and spirit were also constantly adapting to this ability, integrating it into the most natural level. Alright, he was no longer an ordinary person anymore. Luo Nan was just about to test out his new ability when a bloated figure tiptoed through the hallway at this time, entering the range of his senses. Luo Nan shook his head. He resisted the uncomfortable feeling of soreness throughout his body, got off the bed, walked to the door and opened it. Hiss! The person passing by his door was so startled that her hair was about to float up. But soon she was able to clearly see who it was under the light of Luo Nan's room. She handed over the enormous suitcase in her hands without the slightest trace of politeness. Help! Just by looking at the size of the suitcase, Luonan felt that his next cramp wasn't too far away. But he didn't say anything. He silently received the suitcase and then, under the guidance of the figure, he moved the suitcase downstairs as quietly as possible. Emoya got rid of the biggest burden and only carried a guitar case. She recovered her usual free and easy handsomeness. She lightly brushed away the messy hair on her forehead and didn't forget to issue orders. Be gentle. Don't turn on the lights when you're downstairs. They moved the suitcase to the living room with great difficulty and refused the AI housekeeper's suggestion to turn on the lights. The two cousins sat on the sofa, panting. Emoya was Luonan's older cousin. She had an explosive figure, but she was used to wearing gender-neutral clothing. She was fortunate enough to inherit her father's handsome appearance. She wasn't like her mother, who had an average appearance. She had undergone a genetic mutation, growing to a height of 1.8 meters. She was currently the tallest person in the family. Right now she was dressed in cowboy attire. Her legs were crossed, but her top leg was crossed over her knee, forming a smooth and proper large triangle. Her skin-tight jeans wrapped around her, revealing the fine and powerful lines of her body. It was enough to make over 70% of the girls scream and call her handsomeness. They would fall to the ground crying from jealousy. Luonan really was paralyzed on the sofa. Even moving a finger made him feel tired. I've returned the favor. Emoya frowned as she looked at him. You're too weak. You didn't just rely on eating pills to survive this month, right? How could that be? The amount of food I eat in a day is more like what you eat in a month. Then you slept for an entire day. How are you still this week? I slept at around 10 o'clock yesterday. Yesterday? It was the night before yesterday, okay? You slept like a dead pig in the car. It was me and Mo Ping who painstakingly carried you upstairs. Then I never saw you wake up again. Your biological mother even called a doctor. Luonan raised his hand to look at the date displayed on his wristband. September 30th. He was speechless for a time. Luonan reckoned that it was due to his drug withdrawal reaction and the fact that he had been working day and night for the past 2 days. He didn't want to be entangled with this problem. He changed the subject. Why did you run away in the middle of the night? Emoya snorted. Who ran away? I just went to Man City for a roadshow. It took a bit longer, that's all. Man City was a satellite town of Xia City. It was over 400 kilometers away from the city. It was already close to the edge of the city in the wilderness. Luonan frowned when he heard this. How many days? A month. I have to participate in a music festival. My aunt will kill you. She'll be bored by the time I get back. Emoya snorted disdainfully at this sort of threat. Moreover, it wasn't that easy for Luonan to change the topic. Hey, you suddenly came home. Did they give up? Clearly, Emoya was talking about the matter of making medicine. She was the only one in the entire family who roughly knew what Luonan had been up to these past few years. Luonan thought for a bit and laughed. No, I'm resting in stages. It's good that you know what to do. Emoya stood up and walked over to rub Luonan's head. Excellent. The little fellow is much calmer now. But don't pretend anymore. The car is here to pick me up. Get up and move the luggage for the future heavenly queen. Luonan groaned, but in the end he couldn't resist Emoya's forcefulness. He lifted the luggage once more and moved it outside like a thief. He walked out the front door of the house and saw a jet-black old-fashioned van parked outside the courtyard. There were also people waving. Though the sky was dark, Luonan was able to confirm that they were members of Emoya's band. This group of people. With great difficulty, Luonan stuffed the enormous luggage into the van that was already filled with musical instruments and people. Emoya could probably only sit on her own luggage. But Emoya didn't mind this at all. She gave Luonan a hug very straightforwardly. Do your best, bro. You can do it. Do your best too. Great heavenly queen. The old-fashioned van's lights turned on and it gradually drove out of the community. Luonan sent Moya off with his gaze, continuing to work hard for her dream. Chapter 83. Luonan had become a porter. His back was sore and his limbs were weak. His cramped calf showed signs of relapse. Under these circumstances he was too lazy to even go up to the second floor. He walked to the living room and collapsed on the sofa. He didn't want to move at all. His body was half crippled, but his heart was inexplicably happy. He chuckled as he lay on the sofa. Luonan also saw himself when he saw Emoya like this. Sounded a bit painful, but to have a dream and to be on the path of pursuing it was something worth cherishing. Emoya's dream was to create a world-class band and to become the fully deserving lead singer of the Queen of Heaven. Up until now, her band had already gained a bit of fame in Xia City. They had also held 2 small-scale concerts and had begun to attract the attention of music companies. Perhaps she was still far from her ultimate goal, but when she sat in that crowded little box of goods and drove towards the music festival in Mantown, she was advancing on the road towards her dream of becoming a heavenly queen. Luonan had once been very envious of Emoya. They were both chasing after their dreams, but he spent 5 years of time without seeing any substantial progress. Luonan's dream was to let his grandfather's formatting theory defeat Yen Hong, that shameless distorter and plagiarist. He wanted it to be accepted by the world, become a prominent study, and restore the honor it deserved. This wasn't easy. Yen Hong had already fallen, but Quantum Corporation, one of the top 3 companies in the world by market value, possessed the results. They used this foundation to develop the Deep Blue platform, created the burners, and changed the entire world. This supergiant was a nearly insurmountable obstacle that lay across the road ahead. If Luonan wanted to break through it head-on, he would need to become the apex scholar, possess the apex academic status, and have the support of the corresponding capital power. He would need to continuously produce superior results. With his age and accumulation, was this a goal that could be achieved within a few decades? Plus, Luonan wasn't a gifted researcher. He had stumbled with even the most basic replication experiments in the past 5 years. His accumulation of theory was pitifully small. He used himself as a guinea pig. It looked very decisive, but so what if he succeeded? At most, he would be a large lone piece of evidence that wouldn't be recognized. At most, some organizations would be interested in him, mulling over slicing him up for research. Luonan knew of insurmountable obstacles, but he rarely thought about them. Thinking too much would cause him to collapse. At that time, he felt like he was wandering at the intersection of a highway. Staring at the traffic, he felt envious, but he couldn't blend in at all. Emoya and the others still had a container truck, but what he had was just a small body sculpted from medicine. He didn't even have the qualifications to go on the road. But now, the situation had taken a miraculous turn. Luonan's consciousness focused on his left ear. There was a small and exquisite electronic device stuck to his ear canal. The Xianxia. This little thing from the Wilderness Explorers Association had a miraculous function, but only those with a certain level of strength could activate it. Moreover, depending on one's strength, the level of the function would be different. Luonan needed to activate the heavily chained crow the moment he first came into contact with it. Only then was he able to realize the functions on the computer level. But after 30 hours of sleep, his body and mind had inexplicably adapted to the relevant abilities. At this moment, he only needed to slightly concentrate his mind, and he had already triggered the function of the Xianxia and successfully connected to the psychic wave network. The interface of his retina opened, and he entered the homepage that seemed to be in the wilderness. Luonan wasn't unfamiliar with these kinds of changes. Back when he constructed the container format, he obtained the 2 abilities of Glutton King and Hypnotist. At first, he needed a high degree of concentration to be able to activate them. But not long after, the activation of these 2 abilities became natural. He didn't need to make any deliberate movements at all. They completely merged into his flesh and blood genes. Yes, it seemed that he had transformed his active skills into passive skills. He carried a halo with him, and he practically didn't need to consume any mana. Of course, concentration and energy were still indispensable in order to activate the deeper applications. This point was quite interesting, but it wasn't the main focus of Luonan's attention right now. He immediately received a notification when he logged onto the Society's homepage. Among them were messages from He Yuan and Zhang Yingying. There were also 2 emails from the Society's channels. Zhang Yingying's message looked like it was purely to chat with him. She stopped after discovering that he hadn't come online all this time. He Yuan told him to reply as soon as he got online. She reminded him to receive the briefing from the Society's channels. Inside was an evaluation of the operation at the Limestone Water Village pub on the night of the 28th. Luonan looked at the time. It was the middle of the night. How could he disturb someone's sweet dreams at this time? He wasn't in a hurry to contact He Yuan. Instead, he first checked the 2 emails from the society. One of them was an official confirmation letter welcoming him into the professional society. The other was the briefing that He Yuan had brought up. He first opened the confirmation letter. There were stylized words inside. It was an expression of welcome for Luo Nan to join the Wilderness Explorers Society. The contents were probably the same for every new member of the society. The only difference was the basic personal information feedback forms submitted at the time of registration. Some items required the society to confirm and adjust them. After adjusting, the form would be sent back to the new member for further confirmation. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to the other items. He just stared at the ability source section. Right now it displayed System Flow. Luo Nan subconsciously shook his arm. But then he discovered that there was a special asterisk marking behind this item. When he shifted his consciousness over, a piece of information appeared. This item is currently in doubt. It is recommended that the new member contact the Society's Cultivation Department to undergo the relevant cultivation system evaluation and registration work. If the conditions are met, the new member can obtain the qualifications to teach. Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. The word in doubt made him a bit unhappy. But he had to admit that compared to the difficult circumstances of the past 5 years, the current him, I'm on my way. This was an organization that borrowed the name of the Wilderness Explorers Society. In reality, it was an ability user professional society. It was just like its core. What it valued was ability and effectiveness. Just like Luo Nan's identity as a psychic and the corresponding treatment. As long as he used irrefutable facts to prove his worth, he would naturally become the core of the society's tactics. He would also easily erase the doubts of those arrogant and unruly fellows. After all, in the domain of ability users, the strong and the weak, the high and the low were all placed on the surface. They were direct and straightforward. Academics, status, capital. At least Luo Nan had yet to see the influence of these factors up until now. And these were the most difficult obstacles for him to overcome. In this way, he just needed to use reality to prove himself. Chapter 84. Luo Nan used the psychic wave network to search for information related to the evaluation of the cultivation system. He saw the association's definition of a cultivation system. It was a complete and operational cultivation sequence from beginner to advanced. It ensured that a certain number of ordinary people could pass through this cultivation sequence to become an awakened, or even an ability user of a higher level. Luo Nan's focus was on the awakened. It seemed that the most basic condition to confirm a system was that someone could pass through the system to become an awakened. Then he was still a bit lacking. And frankly speaking, he didn't have a particularly clear train of thought on how to become an awakened. From this point of view, it was no wonder that Zhang Yingying was so disdainful of his insistence on the system-type judgment. Of course, Luo Nan didn't believe that this was a flaw in his grandfather's theory. The theory he grasped, including the related methods, were all obtained from a notebook. His grandfather had made thousands of similar notebooks throughout his life. Moreover, there were even more important research results that were stored in the Wilderness Laboratory. The Wilderness Laboratory changed owners during the time of the lawsuit. Most of the relevant notes were lost. The book that Luo Nan grasped was not worth mentioning in the face of the huge amount of research data. But the reason why Yan Hong was able to grasp the relevant theory and produce results so quickly was because he had obtained a considerable portion of the important data. As for why Yan Hong was able to obtain the data, Luo Nan knew that it was because of his own father, that coward. During the most critical stage of his grandfather's lawsuit, that coward took out his grandfather's research results without authorization. He reached a sort of settlement with Yan Hong and the team behind him, exchanging for a light sentence for his grandfather and successfully getting rid of the lawsuit on his own body. But in reality, his grandfather's schizophrenia was already extremely serious. It was impossible for the court to make a particularly harsh sentence. In the end, that coward was only trying to get rid of his own crime. This was a betrayal. Luo Nan firmly believed. Not only did he betray his grandfather, he betrayed his mother who had always supported their research and died because of it. Luo Nan's heart felt stuffy every time he thought of this. He had such a great grandfather, such a great mother, but at the same time he was the son of a coward and a traitor. Luonan took a deep breath. His previous good mood was completely destroyed by the sudden memories. He tried to look at some more information about the society, but he was unable to calm his mind. Seeing that it was still early, Luonan decided to go out and train. Speaking of which, it had been 2 days since he had completed a marathon. He also had to verify how much the withdrawal reaction affected his body. Luonan stood up and was just about to change his clothes when a new message suddenly came from the psychic wave network. It was a direct call. Mr. Luo? Sister He? Luonan looked at his watch. It was just past 3 in the morning. It seemed that He Yuan was also a person who didn't sleep much. You didn't come online the day before. You seem to have entered a deep sleep state? I slept for 30 hours. Luonan was a bit embarrassed. He Yuan said, psychics consume a lot of energy. Sleeping for a long time is the most common way to recover. Time isn't a problem, but whether or not one's energy is restored is the most important thing. Yes, I'm in good spirits now. Other than withdrawal symptoms. Sister He, you wake up so early every day. Are you still awake? Burners only need about 2 hours of quiet rest every day. I usually choose to rest at midnight. The two of them chatted for a bit before He Yuan took the initiative to cut to the chase. I noticed that you just received a message. Did you see the briefing? I saw it. Luonan was embarrassed to say that he hadn't seen it yet. He hurriedly opened the briefing. Luckily, the contents weren't too complicated. He could see that He Yuan's writing style was always serious and straightforward. She bluntly mentioned the failure of the operation this time. She criticized the society's intelligence gathering, the cooperative tactics of the participants, and so on. She didn't hide anything because it was an official document for the society. He Yuan had already mentioned a lot of the contents during the operation on the 28th. Luonan picked the more unfamiliar contents to read. He read 10 lines at a glance and more or less understood the relevant contents. He Yuan's voice continued to transmit over. The society has already approved of this briefing and has issued an evaluation for the participants of the operation. Mr. Luo, you are the only B-. According to the relevant provisions of the society, you will receive a certain amount of honor points. Luonan rushed to look at the society's evaluation at the very bottom of the briefing. The contents regarding him were, a new member of the society. He used a keen and calm attitude to complete his debut. He made a human-faced arachnid unable to hide and displayed his role as a cornerstone. If he had been a commander and not a bait, his performance would have been even more perfect. There was a +4 symbol below the evaluation. This meant that his honor points had increased by 4 points. As for the others, He Yuan had the highest score of 3 points. She had obtained a C+ evaluation. It could be considered that she did not fail. Her merits and demerits offset each other. The rest had a string of ones. There were even zeros. The unlucky Black Wolf was one of them. The other was Black Beetle, who had left the team midway. Looked pretty good. He Yuan reminded him at this time. Honor points are very useful within the society. I hope that you can use them carefully. Sister He, do you have any suggestions? Luonan had a lot of confidence in He Yuan's abilities right now. He directly asked her for guidance. He Yuan said, I've just entered the society. Moreover, the path of a burner is different from yours. I recommend that you understand the society a bit more before making your choice. A/B evaluation and 4 points are already quite impressive for a newcomer. You must display your greatest value. Luonan naturally received the advice. And the B- evaluation made Luonan think of He Yuan's evaluation that night. She also gave Luonan a B evaluation on the mental plane. But she only gave him an F on the fleshly body plane. This seemed to be an important obstacle for Luonan to become an awakened. Luonan couldn't help but ask, what should I do if I want to temper my body and achieve a balance between my mind and body? Do I become an awakened when my fleshly body and mind achieve a balance? I'm still unable to give you too good a suggestion on this point. After all, the military's burners started with alterations. However, I've heard that the society has a training method specifically provided for members of the mentally enhanced. He Yuan was extremely patient. She answered every question. Mr. Luo needs to be clear on this concept. Since it's called awakening, the key is certainly a change in one's understanding. Whether it's training the fleshly body or cultivating the mind, they are just supplementary methods. They help the fleshly body and the mind to truly experience and sense this world. They help to better explain one's strength. The society has a sort of awakening ceremony. It has a similar function. Chapter 85. He Yuan's reply was filled with her straightforward and practical style. Too many people wouldn't like it, but Luo Nan could accept it. Achieving a balance between the fleshly body and the mental, pure and practical goals made it easier to concentrate. But He Yuan sent another message right after. It was a form with the words, Xianxia Emergency Function Training Plan written on it. Xianxia. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment before he remembered that He Yuan had mentioned this line that night. Now even the plan was laid out. There's no need. It wasn't just that he was afraid of trouble. After 30 hours of sleep, his adaptability to his new ability gave Luo Nan quite a bit of confidence. He felt that even if he didn't use the heavily chained crow, maintaining a 24-hour connection shouldn't be a problem. He Yuan didn't give in easily. Mr. Luo, the use of the Xianxia isn't just common sense. It is also a skill. Even when you reach the awakened level, you still need to practice it frequently. Especially right now, the threat of the human-faced arachnid is far from being eliminated. You need to maintain a close connection and not give it an opportunity to take advantage. Luo Nan grunted and finally thought of the human-faced arachnid. He seized the opportunity to change topics. Oh right. Is there any news on the human-faced arachnid? How's the situation with the encirclement and suppression? Not too good. He Yuan's attention was drawn away, but he could hear the seriousness in her voice. Up until now, the society, the military, and Quantum Corporation have handled a total of 11 related incidents. 4 cases have been resolved and 7 cases have failed. In addition, there are still 3 cases that haven't been determined to be the work of the human-faced arachnid. Out of the 14 incidents, 5 people died, 1 was seriously injured, and 67 people suffered serious mental trauma. This was simply a complete rout. Luo Nan wanted to cover his forehead when he heard this. Before he joined the society, he had a bit of reverence towards this organization hidden in the dark side of the human world. But now it seemed that they were in dire straits. How could this young man who harbored dreams of joining endure? He Yuan seemed to sense Luo Nan's thoughts. She spoke softly. When the Darksider life forms first appeared, the government, the military, and the ability user society were in a much more difficult situation than they are now. Later, they paid a considerable price and developed a series of tactics to barely control the situation. The current situation is different. The Darksider life forms invading the metropolis is a problem that we have been trying our best to avoid. But this time, the situation had gone out of control and their efforts over the past 2 years had been ruined. It will definitely take some time to regain control. Luo Nan blurted out. Then how will Quantum Corporation be handled? Nan, what are you talking about? His aunt's voice suddenly rang out. Then the living room lights turned on, illuminating Luo Nan's silhouette on the sofa. At the top of the stairs, Madame Luo Xuqing frowned and stared at him in her pajamas. I made a mistake. Luo Nan's application of the Xianxia was indeed lacking in tempering. It was clearly an application on the mental plane, but he forgot himself for a moment and simply vomited. However, he did not know if there was a similar problem in front of him. He Yuan also noticed the surprise on his end and took the initiative to end the call. Once you confirm the training schedule, send it to me. Luo Nan didn't have the face to refuse at this time. He could only acquiesce. Of course, the most important thing now was to deal with his aunt's questions. He stood up, but he forgot about his body and almost sprained his waist again. He took a deep breath and tried to think of an excuse. I just woke up and a classmate was online, so we chatted. I really slept for a long time. Madame Luo Xuqing walked over, her brows still furrowed. Did you not rest well over at Blue Bay? Nope, it was pretty good. Luo Nan's eyes didn't even blink when he said this sort of lie. His usual dullness was a very good cover. However, Madame Luo Xuqing was far too familiar with him. You don't sleep even after midnight. You live by yourself. How can you handle it? Luo Nan knew that he couldn't continue being entangled. He lowered his head to look for his shoes. It's too early. You should go sleep a bit more. I can't sleep anymore. I might as well go exercise. Who goes for a 3 o'clock run? Madame Luo Shuqing coldly stabbed at him. She then sat on the sofa and patted the spot next to her. I'm already this old. I can't sleep anymore. Come accompany me for a chat. Come on. I wanted to ask you. Do you have any fixed social circles at school? Your friend from that day was called Shuele, right? He looks like a kind and honest person. Luo Nan knew that he could no longer escape. He could only sigh to himself and obediently return to endure a new round of torture. A full 2 hours passed and Luo Nan chatted with his aunt from 3 to 5. Finally, Luo Nan obtained permission to go for a morning jog. It was as if he had been granted amnesty. He used the fastest speed to change into his clothes and shoes, and he left the house without looking back. It wasn't that he wasn't filial. It was just that as time passed, there was a risk that Moya would be exposed for leaving home in the middle of the night. Usually Moya would wake up to practice her voice at this time. It was better to get away from this troublesome place. Luo Nan calculated the time until it was almost 8 o'clock. He reckoned that the first round of the battle between mother and daughter had already ended. Only then did he turn around and return home. He hadn't had much time to train in the outside world for 3 hours. His body was in a terrible state due to the withdrawal symptoms, and he couldn't withstand too much energy consumption. Luo Nan found a park to properly familiarize himself with the prison format, the heavily chained crow, the wraith sign and various other elements. He wanted to see what sort of changes would occur to his body after the adaptation period. He didn't gain anything in the past 3 hours, but when he returned home he was greeted with his aunt's anger as expected. Luo Nan, look at what you've done. As an accomplice, it was impossible to hide this sort of thing. The AI system would faithfully provide all of the surveillance footage for his aunt to choose and appraise. Luo Nan knew that he didn't need to explain anything at this time. He just needed to lower his head and take the scolding. In any case, it would be mealtime soon. Dinner's ready. Cool down. First fill your stomach. Over at the dining room his uncle Mo Haihang sat down first. He scooped a bowl of porridge and side dishes for himself. He drank it unhurriedly, tasted a few mouthfuls and nodded. Today's millet is quite sticky. Next time I'll buy this one. Mo Haihang. His aunt's firepower shifted in an instant. However, his uncle remained calm and collected. Since you know where she is and where she's going, how could you lose her? Just endure it for now. You can scold her when you get back. If it were anyone else, such an exaggerated statement might just be the fuse for a family war. However, his uncle was one of the few people who had the qualifications to say such things. As a senior technical member of the SCA, Mo Haihang had already worked in this authority department known as the Social Credit Administration for nearly 20 years. In this modern society where credit had completely replaced the function of currency, the SCA was the witness and administrator of all credit. It was also responsible for auditing the corresponding granting of authority. It could be said to be the hottest authority department. Chapter 86. Luo Shuqing didn't say much about her husband's stubbornness. She just sneered, "Is this something that can't be thrown away? Your arrogant and willful daughter." In any case, Luo Nan was able to temporarily leave the battlefield thanks to his uncle's diversion of fire. He went upstairs to change his clothes and wash up. Who knew that there would be many things to do this morning? He had just finished showering and changed his clothes when a message came from the Hexier. It was from an unfamiliar number. Luo Nan thought for a bit and chose to answer. He was just about to ask when the other side spoke. "Fuck you." Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. Which psycho? The society had this kind of person? Then the voice on the other side clearly lost control and shouted, "Go hide in that mechanical woman's crotch. I'll show you guys sooner or later." This person sounded like he was drunk. His words weren't very clear and they were all filled with profanities. A long string of curses was spilled in less than half a minute. Luo Nan finally reacted at this time. Mechanical woman. Was this referring to He Yuan? Then it was related to the operation on the 28th. He quickly made a guess when he saw the other side's vile attitude. He looked at the avatar and sure enough, Black Beetle? Wasn't this fellow the one who couldn't take Yuan's criticism that night and left the team halfway? He and the unlucky Black Wolf were given 0 points in the society's evaluation report. Now it seemed that this person's personality was vile enough. There really were all sorts of people in the society. Even Buddha would get angry after being showered in the face with profanities, let alone Luonan. He frowned and replied, a blatant threat with an intense attitude. Can I assume that you're being controlled by the human-faced arachnid? The other side was suddenly stifled by this accusation. Then he gritted his teeth and said, Kid, don't think that being a psychic is amazing. Let's play slowly in the future. Luonan responded coldly, I'll keep you company any time. The two sides hung up and Luonan discovered that he had spat out a mouthful of saliva due to his impulsiveness. He patted his cheeks lightly and stuck his head out from the staircase. It was very quiet downstairs. The husband and wife were still looking at each other. It seemed that his aunt's anger had yet to dissipate. He let out a breath of relief and walked down the stairs. Uncle and aunt turned their faces in unison when they saw Luonan come down. Uncle indicated for Luonan to sit down. Come eat. The millet porridge is nice to drink while it's hot. Mo Haiheng had been working in the government for many years. Although he was not tall, he had a serious expression and was usually taciturn. He did not look friendly. But in fact at home he was the standard cook. As long as they were at home he would take care of all 3 meals from morning till night. It wasn't that he was henpecked or anything like that. It was just that his aunt's culinary skills had been the same for decades. He really didn't dare to compliment her. As for her 2 children, Emoya had perfectly inherited her aunt's powerful talent and unparalleled culinary skills. Although she dared to cook, no one dared to eat it. There was also Mo Peng, Luonan's older cousin of the same age. It wasn't even 10 o'clock on a weekend morning. How was it possible for him to get up? The family ate breakfast together and they didn't even bother to call him. It was probably because of Emoya's extremely serious behavior of running away from home that the atmosphere at the dining table had been low for a long time. Uncle had seen this kind of situation many times, so he calmly ate his porridge and watched the news. Luonan wasn't in a good mood to talk, so he just kept his head down and ate. His appetite was there. Plain porridge and side dishes were certainly not enough to satisfy him. Uncle had considered this point when he cooked. Beef was paired with nutritional supplements and he was guaranteed to eat until he was full. It was reasonable to say that this was a very normal breakfast for the Mo family, even though it had been a month since the incident. But Luonan felt a bit strange today. It was because his mental senses were spread out at all times. Even if he lowered his head, he could still see his aunt and uncle exchanging glances. Seemed to be a bit too frequent. Was it like this in the past? Or was his mental state too sensitive today? Seeing that he was more or less done eating, his aunt suddenly opened her mouth. You Luonan. Aunt? Nothing going on today, right? Nothing. Then let's go to Anhai together. Let's go see your grandfather. Luonan was clearly stunned. Then he responded with a resounding voice, okay. But he was a bit worried in the blink of an eye. Grandpa's condition isn't good again? No, don't make blind guesses. Aunt tapped her chin. Go. You clean up today. Luonan had no objections. Anhai Medical Center was a very famous sanatorium for mental illnesses in Xia City. It was located in the outskirts of Xia City, nearly 200 kilometers away from the main city district. It was approximately an hour's drive. Every time the family went on an outing, the front passenger seat was a golden treasure trove. No one wanted to receive his aunt's advice in the rear compartment. This time Luonan seized the seat before the sleepy Mo Peng could. He let out a sigh of relief when he got in the car. An hour's drive could be said to be long, but it could be said to be short. From Mo Peng's perspective, it was clearly very long. But Luonan had a lot of things to do to pass the time. He opened his portable notebook and looked at the interface of the flexible e-ink screen. Right now, the newly appeared visualization icon was still in the download state. Over 30 hours had passed and the progress had only reached 2%. Well, it was all thanks to this too. Otherwise he would have thought that it was stuck. Luonan was unable to estimate just how much information he had dug out from the body of the human-faced arachnid. Or perhaps the external neuron's analysis speed was limited after it left the laboratory's abundant energy. Luo Nan looked at the battery capacity of the flexible e-ink screen. There was still around half of it left. This was already an extraordinary consumption, but it was nothing compared to the independent power station of Gear's laboratory. He could give it a try when he got to school tomorrow. Luo Nan opened the drawing software and directly entered the second layer interface. A 5-layer structure of students, staff, technicians, clergymen, and politicians appeared. But then he frowned. Was it a misconception? Did he feel that the interface had become dirty? It was inexplicably a bit dark, and it was even a bit trembling. Before he could take a closer look, his uncle in the driver's seat turned his head. "You're researching the societal format diagram? Or you switched to a flexible screen?" This driver of his was quite idle under the autopilot mode, and his gaze was quite sharp. Luo Nan grunted, wanting to vaguely brush it off. But Luo Nan's uncle curled his lips. "In 79, I was forced by a certain someone to start a research project on the Bureau's supercomputer. I built a format diagram model for him, using 30 years of Xia City's authority and credit data. In the end, I was punished and I was reprimanded by your grandfather for trying to fish from a tree. These are all things that happened before my eyes." Luo Nan knew that the certain someone was referring to his father, Luo Zhongheng. It seemed that Luo Nan's uncle and his father had a pretty good relationship. These past few years, Luo Nan had always been trying to correct Luo Nan's impression of his father. But it was useless to say these things. Luo Nan would never forgive a coward who used his grandfather's blood, sweat, and tears to exchange for freedom, then disappeared without a trace. He grunted in response, not wanting to say anything. In the back, Mo Peng saw his old man open his mouth and discovered a good opportunity to break free from his mother's low-pressure domain. He slid his seat forward and forcefully inserted himself. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.